Okay, so this is back again, back to save the day. I don't even know. And so I woke up this morning, I checked my email, and by waking up I mean like 2 minutes ago as of recording, and someone requested that I go back to doing this, so what the hell. Also, for the record, this will probably sound like shit because one, I just woke up, and two, I cannot do voices for shit when it comes to Spike and stuff, so yeah, I'm just going to totally wing this and probably take the piss. So, let's get to it, with The Many Secret Origins of Scootaloo Chapter 2, Spike. No one would ever say that Spike had a normal life. The mere fact that he was a baby dragon who lived with ponies shot that idea right out of the water. If one were to add the fact that he was the #1 assistant to Princess Celestia's protege, then normal became an utterly laughable concept. The fact that said protege was Twilight Sparkle, well, that made the idea of calling Spike's life normal more outrageous than saying Princess Celestia was secretly Discord's baby mama. Though, if one were to listen to a certain gossipy baker. That said, Baby Dragon was about halfway through the checklist Twilight had left him when the door to the library slammed open and the purple unicorn stomped through, muttering about gossip and where foals came from. Spike, being a wise little assistant, quickly hurried down the ladder he had been standing on and dashed into the kitchen to get Twilight some water. Whenever his friend went on a tear, it was always wise to get her something to drink, lest she blew out her vocal cords from screaming in frustration. Setting the cup of water on Twilight's desk and clearing away the many scrolls and papers that accumulated on its surface over the last few days, Spike went back to cleaning, knowing that Twilight would talk to him when she was ready. Pressing the subject would only turn her frustrations on him, and the baby dragon was not interested in becoming a bucking bag for the upset unicorn. 10 minutes ticked by before Twilight finally stopped grumbling to herself. All the energy seemed to leave her, and Twilight sat down on the floor with an unladylike warmth, her head slowly drifting down and her eyelids growing heavy. She wasn't sleepy, of course. Spike had come to learn early on in their relationship that Twilight had stages of frustration, much like there were stages of grief. Disbelief, mania, rage, reflection, and acceptance or alteration. She was firmly in stage 4, which was the best time to make her talk about her problems. If Spike waited too long, Twilight would either decide to brush the problem aside, or worse, come to the conclusion that she had to fix the issue herself. That would lead to bad things. "Hey, Twilight," Spike said softly, setting his feather duster aside and walking over to his friend, patting her on the shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah, just a tiny bit frustrated, Spike." Wisely, the young dragon decided not to make one of the 100 jokes that were begging to leap off his tongue. He hadn't survived being around 6 powerful mares by shooting his mouth off. Instead, Spike sat down next to her, playing with his tail, which wasn't as naughty as it sounded, as he waited for her to work up the nerve to talk about what was bothering her. "I kinda blew up over at Sugar Cube Corner." "Did your mane catch on fire?" "No, nothing that bad." Twilight missed the grin that burst on Spike's face. Lyra had lost their bet about Twilight's next freakout, as she owed him 10 bits. "I just got mad at the cakes. Oh, I'll never be able to show my face in there again." Twilight gently laid her head on the table and whimpered, a blush creeping along her cheeks as she remembered all the eyes staring at her as she screamed about reproduction. "So, what made you lose your cool? Did someone insult your mane?" "No," Twilight said suddenly. "Did they point out that weird thing you do when you eat a brownie?" "No, they... What weird thing?" "Did some pony make a crack about your weight?" "Are you saying I'm fat?" Spike, realizing that he was stepping onto unsteady ground, quickly backpedaled. Because they would be wrong to do any of that. You want me to give him a little of a 1-2-1? He quickly did a quick shadow box move, and Twilight laughed at his gusto. "No need for that, Spike." It was clear that Twilight felt a bit better after the giggle, and Spike couldn't help but beam. "It's just really silly. I should have reacted like that." "What did the cakes do?" Spike asked, scooting a bit closer to her. They said that Scootaloo was Rarity and Applejack's daughter. Can you imagine that? Twilight scoffed at the notion and the evidence the two had offered. They even began describing the two of them making out in Applejack's kitchen, kissing each other and playing with their mane, and Twilight blinked, seeing that Spike was staring into nothingness, a droplet of jewel leaking out of his mouth whilst he stroked his tail, which was just as naughty as it sounded. Spike! 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 Don't stop, girls, I'll just watch, Spike quickly exclaimed. Ew! Twilight squealed, shoving him away. That's sick, Spike! The baby dragon hauled himself up, shaking his head in a desperate attempt to clear the visions of Applejack and his beloved Rarity rolling around on the floor, lips pressed together. Maybe some honey fell over and poured all over their flanks and they had to list. Spike! Twilight roared. Shaking his head, Spike stored the daydream away for another time. Sorry, Twilight, didn't mean to doze off, just thinking how vile and horrible that was. Sure, Twilight said, rolling her eyes. There's no way that Scootaloo is Rarity's and Applejack's kid, though, Spike said, casually climbing up onto the table. He figured that this was a better resting spot, as it would make it difficult for Twilight to shove him if he did something stupid. Twilight grinned, glad some creature was finally on her side. Exactly, I mean the biological... Well, that is true, Spike interrupted, not wanting another lecture on the creation of foals. Twilight had given him the talk a year ago. It had involved a slideshow, several Venn diagrams, and Twilight stuttering through the entire thing, where she wasn't running back to her books and muttering, "No way is that right, who would put that there?" It had taken 3 private letters to Princess Celestia before the dragon finally understood half of what the unicorn had been trying to tell him. But I meant that I know all about Scootaloo and never heard about her being related to Rarity or Applejack. You know about Scootaloo's past? Twilight asked, interest piqued. I mean, I never really thought about it before, but it is kind of weird. She just showed up one day and we all accepted her as Applebloom and Sweetie Belle's friend. But I've never seen her parents or heard if she has any brothers or sisters. Well, I think that's to do with the fact that she was raised in Canterlot. I didn't know she lived there. Did you run into her the street or something, Spike? No way, Twilight. Scootaloo was too busy training. Training? You know, to be a spy. Twilight blinked, and Spike launched into his story before she could protest. And I'm not reading this in Spike's voice, I'm reading this in a dramatic voice. Oh. 2 years ago. My name is Scootaloo. All of my life I have been trained for one simple task. To serve and protect Equestria. I do this not as a soldier or a politician, but as a covert agent in Her Majesty Princess Celestia's secret service. I work in the shadows, protecting the innocent so that they may never know of the true danger that lurks within this land. It is better that way. If they knew even a fifth of what I had done, none of them would ever leave their homes. I began my training when I was a foal. I was selected by the princess herself every day my instructors forged my body into the ultimate weapon. My mind was strengthened too. I learned to outthink my opponents and led them to believe that the only pony they were battling was someone beyond the norm. Wait, why is this in first person? Because it's cooler that way, Twilight. But what does cool... I was just gotten back from dealing with a terrorist cell located on the nameless island in the maritime sea, and I had just been looking forward to a well-earned break. Fate, it seemed, was not on my side, because I barely got into my apartment. She's only 10 years old and she has an apartment? When a scroll magically appeared in my hooves! Only 2 ponies know the counterspell to get beyond my walls, and I knew it wasn't my landlady sending me yet another past due notice. A picture of a fierce-looking albino lion in a business suit slipped from the scroll and landed in my hooves. I barely glanced at the photo before focusing on the legend pertaining to it. Agent Scootaloo, this is Ghost, a rising warlord in Zebrica. He has recently been attacking trade routes within Zebrica's northern desert. Equestria relies upon these routes to bring the finest silks from Camarabia. It has been determined that the removal of ghosts will result in instability within the region, something neither we nor our allies can accept. The ghost has made, through agents of ours, offers to turn a blind eye to our trains in return for funds. We are not authorized at this time to make such an offer publicly. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to travel to Zebrica and deliver an unauthorized payment to the ghost. You are scheduled to meet Luna in 1400 hours. If you are captured or killed, it requests you will deny any knowledge of your acts. This scroll will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Spike? Meanwhile, back in the real world... Spike looked up at Twilight, brow furrowed. He had just been getting to the juicy part of his tale, and when his friend had decided to interrupt him midstream. What's the matter? Spike, none of this makes any sense. What do you mean? Twilight gave him a cool look, one normally reserved for the most evil of beings, ponies that brought back overdue library books. First off, I doubt Princess Celestia would use children as spies. Spike wagged her finger at a sly smile on his lips. But that's the beauty of it, Twilight. No one would ever suspect a child could be a spy. It's the perfect cover. Spike. The baby dragon folded his arms over his chest, giving her a cocky look. Just admit it. It's the perfect cover. Twilight rolled her eyes as the headache that had gained from bashing her head against the table coming back with a rage of 1,000 hammers. Alright, fine. It's the perfect cover. She jabbed at the dragon with her hoof before he had the chance to get too smug. But there are other problems with your story. Such as... Equestria doesn't have any trade routes in Zebrica. No one in Ponyville even knew what zebras were, remember? And suddenly they're our biggest trading partner and require child spies to go help them out. No, Spike, there are simply no trade routes. That's what the government would want you to think, Spike said quickly, clearly pleased with his answer. Of course we would have trade routes there, no one would suspect, and that makes it the perfect cover. Twilight droned. She gave her #1 assistant a glare so icy that had a polar bear seen it, he would have screamed in agony before turning into a popsicle. Spike, luckily, was too naive to realize just how much danger he was in, and continued on with his story whilst Twilight looked down at the table and wondered if it would be wise to grab a pillow before she began slamming her head against it. Tech people always creep spies out. They never go to the field, they never shoot a gun, and they are more scared about one of their precious gadgets getting broken than you are taking a bullet to a flank. We ask thee to get out of thine quarters. Thine? Is that even a word? I rolled my eyes as I entered Luna's lab, sidestepping all the gadgets and gizmos she had in various states of repair. Wagons, flying machines, various bubbling vials and mystical elements all fought for space as she crowded shelves, and I knew that if I wasn't careful I'd accidentally turn myself into a frog or blow a hole through the castle wall. There were already several such holes in the lab, each one boarded up in haste so Luna could get back to her experiments in peace. I'm here under orders, Luna, I told her, making my way back towards the back of the room. Luna was standing near a twisted frame that looked like a cross between a bunny rabbit and a wagon. We demand thee leave us, Agent Scootaloo, for we are thinely working on our masterpiece. Again, thine is neither a word and neither is ninely. Hold on, I'm gonna get my dictionary. That's great, but I really need my gear, and I doubt your sister will be happy if I can't complete my vision. Fine, to the secret lab. Luna led me over to a large statue of Celestia that at once was terrifying and breathtaking. Dine Leslie pulled the lever. What the frickin' hell? I did as I was commanded, knowing that not doing so would only lead to pouting on the part of the princess / mad scientist. The two of us fell through a trapdoor and landed in a small cart with a bar in front that secured us. Please stay seated at all times. A voice droned as Luna licked her hoof and then made sure her mane was sticking straight back. The next instant we were plummeting through darkness, the cart spinning and rocking as we rode back the track deep down under Canterlot. With a final joke, we were thrown through the air, landing in the lab below the now donning white lab coats, long black hoof guards, and dark-tinted goggles. Luna held up her hoof, and I clanked it with mine. Clanked it with mine. Clanked it